Hello viewers and welcome back. Today, missiles in duels. I'm going to be talking about a variety of missiles, the best places to use them, how to use them, and the impact they have in the duel overall. I'm also going to be talking about a few common myths or opinions that you may have heard online, and debating whether or not they're true or partially true. Without further ado, let's begin! We're going to begin here with the Michael on Ibby's Ralph. Now, we're going to go into a rate fight here to disprove a common thought, that the Michael is somehow able to make a plane with a worse flight model overcome that issue and win a dogfight. Not the case. As you're going to see here, the F2, I'm forcing rate against Ibby, because Ralph, he's going to get some locks and he's going to fire off the Michaels, but you're going to see just what happens when he does that. First Michael comes off and it doesn't turn tight enough. It can't reach us, and although it does wrap around the back and go for a 180, by the time it's completed that, it's out of juice, and more often than not, it will simply lose track of you and not do the 180 to begin with. But that's okay, he can launch a second. But look at that, goes straight off because he's launched it directly into a notch, which is often what happens when you shoot a missile at a guy in a rate fight. You'll notice I've used no countermeasures at all, and both missiles have completely been defeated. From here, he gets no opportunity again to launch, no angle, and I just reel him in and take him down. But what happens if I don't force rate? Well, here we go, merging up into a vertical spiral. You wouldn't do this if you were playing competitively against the Ralph in your F2, but that's fine, we're doing it for the demonstration. I'm waiting for Ibby to go up, do something aggressive so I can cut in beneath him and go for a counter attack. It looks here like he's about to do something, and there he goes for his counter. I'm not worried because I can cut beneath. Or can I? Looks like I've made a mistake here, I misjudged, and it comes down and hits the missile, and I am dead to rights. And there it goes, and... nothing happens. It doesn't blow up, and instead flies right past me. A missile that should have blown me up. But why? First, let's make sure it was close enough. The missile diamond here shows that it's 20 meters away, while the Michael has a proxy fuse range of just 12. But viewers, the reason this is happening is because the missile diamond range is not based off where your plane is, but rather an arbitrary point based on which camera you're using. As you can see here in this test flight, as I switch through the cameras, the range to the bot changes, so this Michael is definitely close enough to explode. The real culprit is the time it takes the proximity fuse to arm. On the Michael, it's a whopping 1.8 seconds, which in a shot like this means it's got to cover over 450 meters of ground before it will arm. In a vast majority of stall fight and close fighting positions, this sort of range simply doesn't happen. A lot of them are fought mostly within 0.3, at which point the Michael absolutely isn't going to arm, unless it gets a direct hit, which with the inconsistency of its thrust vectoring is very, very unlikely to happen. Which leaves the options of using the gun, or a shorter fuse missile, which on the French planes doesn't exist, as the Magic 2 also has a 1.8 second fuse. So in summary, we know that the Michael and other long fuse missiles aren't able to turn in during a rate fight, but also during a close-in fight they aren't able to fuse. So really, they're just dead weight, except for a few rare scenarios. Number 1 is a head-on at greater range after some people have made mistakes, and number 2 is in catching players who run away, which I'll talk more about later. And now with the Michael discussed, let's move on to a missile that I believe is far more potent in a dogfight, the R-73. This missile combines a lot of things. It's got a short fuse, it's got thrust vectoring, and it's got a flare-resistant IR seeker, which are all recipes for excellent success. You can't notch it, you can flare it, but it's not so easy at these tiny ranges. And it has the turning, and it has the fuse. So you'll see here against Ibby, I'm launching it off, and he flares the first few, and he keeps flaring, but one just makes it through and takes him down. But like the Michael, these guys aren't going to work miracles. In a rate fight position, where you're launching at higher aspects and further distances, yes, they're not going to get notched, but at this sort of shot, it's very easily flared. As you can see, Ibby flares it straight away, and I'll keep rating round. But they're not going to do anything for me here, unless he makes a drastic change to his position. Here I launch another one off, and again, it's flared quickly, and it couldn't have pulled in anyway. But here, when he changes direction, this is when the R-73 becomes useful. For hitting those shots where your nose is not quite there, it's very close range, you couldn't get it with a gun, but you can fire off a missile, and it might connect. This manifests the best in stall fights, which are where the R73 is the easiest and most successfully used. Planes like the flanker have very low responsiveness to your mouse at low speed, so aiming in a stall is very hard, but with the R73 you can simply fire off loads of them, and due to their short fuse and flare resistance, they can just fly in, and these shots are things the Michael would never dream of hitting. I'm going to use the J10 and the PL5E to explain these last 2 points, but they should be applicable to any missile that's reasonably fast, has a short fuse, and can turn reasonably well. The first thing I'm going to talk about here is using missiles to catch people who extend from you. If you're in a fight and you get to a winning position, and like Ibi does here, he sees that he's lost and runs away, when you have no missiles, especially in a plane like this with a GSH, it can be a shot that's simply not going to be possible to hit. So what can be done about that? You guessed, we simply bring a missile with us. The PL5 is excellent for this because it's fast, flare resistant, and turns reasonably well, and as you can see, Ibi flares, but it doesn't matter because he's got such a small time to do this, while it is possible, that it's very difficult for him to flare it. The last thing I want to talk about today is a technique that's been dubbed shotgunning, wherein you use your missile as a sort of unguided rocket with a proximity fuse. Missiles with fast acceleration and short fuse time are necessary here, whereas flare resistance is less important, as you'll see in a second. The J10 is uniquely good at this because the PL5 is extremely fast, and it has great nose control on the plane itself. It's worth noting that in a vast majority of these low-speed close-range shots, it's completely unnecessary to use a missile to shotgun the opponent, because in leading the missile, you will have inevitably gone past the lead that you need to use the gun. This means that shotgunning is reserved mostly for scoring style points. However, on planes like the J10, with a gun that's pretty hard to aim, low velocity, it can be easier to aim the missile than it can be to aim the gun. So that's one situation where you might find it beneficial over just style reasons. I said earlier that flare resistance isn't so important, and here's what I mean by that. I'm going to go into a stall here with Ibi, and I'm going to attempt to shotgun him with the missile. Now, because we're close enough, and this missile is fast enough, by the time the tracking delay and the fuse delay have gone off, it'll be close enough to fly into him regardless, so I'm able to lock the sun here, and just launch it anyway, and boom. With all that done, there's a few things I need to address before the conclusion. Number one, we've already seen the idea that the Michael is somehow able to make the plane win any fight it's in. We've seen that it's not. The Michael has its shortcomings, namely the long fuse and the fact that it can't pull into rate fights due to getting notched or simply not turning hard enough. The next thing to address is the concept that anything with an R73 is unbeatable. This is also not true. We've seen that the R73 relies on you having some sort of position to fire it with, be that in a stall or somewhere where you nearly have the nose on, so we can't guarantee that either. The next thing to address is the concept that dogfights with missiles are vastly different from those without. This simply isn't true. The R73 is the only missile in the game that makes a big difference, and that is reserved to planes with just R73, so flanker versus flanker, etc. For the rest of the planes in the game, missiles in dogfights only really serve to make a few differences, namely catching people who extend, and therefore on paper have already lost the battle, or for shotgunning, which is mostly for style points, or maybe if you don't want to aim a bad to aim gun, that makes a difference. Other than that, it's essentially the same as just fighting with guns only, so if someone complains that you're using missiles in a dogfight, you can tell them it's on them. So hopefully, viewer, you will now understand the role of missiles in dogfights, how to use them, what they do, and which missiles are the best to use. With that one wrapped up, I'll ask you to join the Discord, look at the website, and of course go to statshark.net for any of the graphs. Thank you very much for watching, and goodbye!